What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and League of Legends patch 12.9 is upon us. MSI is already in full swing. This patch is solo queue only. For those of you who've heard about the big durability update, that is in 12.10. But as you can see here, this patch is still very, very exciting. There are mid-scope reworks to Olaf and Taliyah here. And also, as a note, this one is being recorded live on my Twitch channel. I will not always be building these these patch rundowns out live. But in this instance, for me, in the real world, the last hour, 20 minutes was spent live on Twitch building this out, answering questions. If you want to do the same thing and hang out while I'm building these, I stream, FYI. Otherwise, cool beans. If you're watching live, this will go on YouTube. You can recognize the stuff you already saw. Anyway, pretty cool patch. Cool stuff going on. Nerfs to champions who are doing way, way too well. Largely aimed at high elo with Ahri, Nidalee, and Renekton. Sion, definitely a frustration point for a lot of people in a lot of places. But a lot of cool changes, really cool stuff. Let's go on to it. So, challenges exist. It's a cool thing. Not really the scope of the patch rundown, but I'm excited about them existing. The thing I'm most good about existing, though, is the Olaf mid-scope update. So, Olaf has long had a problem of being an early game champion who fell off a cliff. If he's ever been good in pro play, he's been like a 47% win rate solo queue champion. And overall, just, hey, has shown his age, is a cool berserker champion, but doesn't quite fit the game right now. So, big update. So, what's happening? Well, it's a lot of worse early, better late, and just some kind of cool kit tweaks. So, attack damage growth is up, health growth is up, mana growth is up. Better late. So, here is the health and mana difference. Up a solid, 0 to 4% more health. Mana, 0 to 13% more mana. Okay, great. Cool beans. Nothing too scary there. He's getting some more attack damage, and don't mind the second half of this chart just yet, but base AD up pretty substantially. Now, of course, as you buy more attack damage items, and you will buy more attack damage items, there's... How am I trying to say it? The percentage difference here is going to mean less and less. I mean, same for bonus health, don't get me wrong, but still a pretty meaningful change. The thing I'm going to bring up here, though, is the passive has changed. So Olaf's old passive was, and probably still is, multiplicative attack speed. It is fully multiplicative across all other sources of attack speed in the game. You're leveling up from stats, your W active, everything. And it would scale from 0 to about 100% bonus attack speed if you are almost dead. Now it's scaling based on character level, as well as how low you are. So 40% max attack speed at level 1, 100% max attack speed at level 18, which is theoretically a buff, because it maxes out at 30% health. I'm assuming everything is linear. No reason not to believe that. But that means that we have some interesting changes in what's really happening here. It also gives lifesteal. Now, again, just like the attack speed, the amount of lifesteal you get scales in his missing health. But it's cool that his lifesteal has 100% uptime, but also the higher health you are, and the earlier game it is, the less lifesteal you are getting. So this is going to, if you want to be really negative, it's like you could never know how much lifesteal you have because it scales off level and health, and there's no way you can do the calculus and all that at all times. I think in general, the kind of thing is the thing where I think it's totally reasonable to be like, it just works. I know it can be kind of a meme to be like, it just works, but I personally, literally as a player of video games, it just works. I am fine with it just works. For systems that, I can't optimize anyway. Olaf has lifesteal. It's, a pretty decent amount. Attack stuff, right? There's not a lot of optimizing you can do around, but if I attack the Gromp, I'll get 1% less life. So it's you lost life because you gained health, which is the point of lifesteal. So, you can't optimize around it, so it just works is fine, and you don't, even though they're giving you the numbers, right, and you can literally just do the numbers, this is the kind of thing where I really don't think the fact that the numbers keep changing at all points in time is a bad thing for the game. It just works, it's totally reasonable to me. Anyway, bonuses max out at a higher amount of health, which means we can do math. So, of course, our AD is up, but I'm basically saying, okay, we have your base AD, we have your attack speed growth, and we have, if we assume you're at exactly half HP at all points in time, or at least at this snapshot, what is DPS before and afterwards? Well, in the early game, it's weaker because 40% capped attack speed compared to 100% capped attack speed is clearly not as good. But pretty early on, we get to the point where we're getting 70% of the value compared to 50% of the value. And even though the value is lower, we're getting more of it. And so we catch up and catch up and catch up and catch up and catch up. And then eventually we're just a better champion overall. So, weaker early, better late. Also keep in mind that because you have lifesteal on this thing, you're also higher health while clearing the jungle in the first place. This almost certainly does a lot to slow his jungle clear. This is virtually a guarantee the jungle clear is slower. You are not lower on health, you have less attack speed. just like in all cases, like this is probably a slower jungle clear. It's really likely this is a slower jungle clear. I know there are like very skilled junglers who have like done demo clears in the champion, and I'm sure that data is out there, but based on the numbers, I would assume a slower jungle clear. Next up is Undertow, baseline cooldown up 2 seconds. So if you fail to pick up Undertow, this is a very, very meaningful cooldown difference. Keep in mind the damage is worse or equal. So again, rank 1 through 4, lower damage, slower jungle clear, less of a lane bully as well if you're going to play top Olaf. Catches up by level 9, by rank 5 of the ability, but the base cooldown is much longer, so if you don't pick it up, hey, by the way. Also, mid-range 425 means you've got to run pretty far to pick it up. In lane, that can be tough to do. It does shred armor, by the way, though. That's actually pretty meaningful. It shreds for 4 seconds, and by the way, if you pick it up, you get 3 seconds on the cooldown. The cooldown will be 3 seconds. It fully refunds it, but you can only throw it every 3 seconds. That scales with ability haste, so it's basically resets to when I threw it -3, or when I threw it +3, whatever the number is. But yeah, so this is now an armor shred. The damage is, again, we saw that his DPS is better really quickly, but now, like, as a Juggernaut, and by the way, Olaf is, I would say, more of a Juggernaut than a diver. As Olaf is a Juggernaut, he has to fight frontline, and it's why Darius and Garen have armor shred, or armor penetration as part of the kit. It's why Shyvana has % health damage on the kit, and it's why Undertow has armor shred. Juggernauts are meant to, so like an actual Juggernaut, which is like, I'm fucking beefy, I'm a frontliner, I hit shit in front of me, and I just hit it until it dies. They are meant to sort of fill the role of an AD carry, where they also hit frontline. Like, the entire point of, like, if you have a tank and an AD carry, right, you have a Maokai and Ashe, your goal is to stay in this kind of stance where the Maokai's in front, and you kill their frontline before they kill yours. Maokai's very tanky, he locks it up so that the Olaf or the Garen or the Shyvana cannot reach the Ashe, and the Ashe just deals damage when the Maokai holds him in place, and the Maokai doesn't die before the Ashe kills the whatever the frontline is, right? That's the point of tank plus AD carry. If you replace Maokai Ashe with 2 Juggernauts, and it's like, well, can Garen and Darius kill Maokai before Ashe kills one of them? Probably. I mean, he's silenced, he's getting pulled in, he's getting stuck in place, they burn him down, you've got a bunch of armor pen and shit like that, and then they chase the Ashe down. Like, that's the team fight goal of Juggernauts, right? Is that if Juggernauts are playable, you can kind of replace the tank and AD carry role with a Juggernaut and, survive a Malzahar ultimate or whatever, but then this is now where crowd control matters. Juggernauts are not as tanky as actual tanks. So Maokai might survive a Mal's ult or an Azir hitting, but a Darius will live long enough in the 2-on-2, but will not live long enough in the 5-on-5. And that texture is what makes the classes interesting, right? That Darius clearly beats Maokai in the 1v1. He doesn't beat him role for role in the 5-on-5, but he probably still wins in the 2-on-2, and then a 3-on-3 is close pending the champions, a 4-on-4, like, that's the entire, like, team-based tension of this class, right? The smaller the numbers, the more Juggernauts matter. The higher the numbers, the more tanks matter, and the more marksmen matter. You get, the more structured the fight, right? That is the entire conceit of fighters as a class and assassins as a class, right? That's the entire conceit. That's the entire, like, way they function. To dive back into it, giving a Juggernaut armor shred so that they can more clearly deal with tanks is, like, very good class synergy. I wouldn't mind a world where, like, Juggernauts always had some kind of offensive class synergy. Like, many of you who are watching will know I've been playing a lot of Lost Ark recently. And one thing that's interesting about Lost Ark is, I hope this is like a useful bit of information. It is like a team-based PvE, right? So it's like 4-on-1 we fight a boss. And there are hard supports who like shield people and heal people and give a bunch of damage amps. But every DPS class in that game has some kind of team synergy. So like a War Dancer gives everyone 18% crit chance for like 6 seconds, which is like really meaningful, right? It's like 18% more damage to your team on a limited uptime window. And so like, oh yeah, martial artists, have, and this is not really true. I'm just gonna like start saying things as like ideas that are not like really true to Lost Ark, but like as an idea, right? It's like, oh, well, melee DPS tends to have better damage amp to teammates. Like for example, so the War Dancer is melee range and she has 18% crit amp and she has another buff that's like another 10% crit amp, but like we're just gonna, focus on one ability at a time. By comparison, there's a range DPS class called a Gunslinger who has a 6% crit chance amp. Now, she's way the hell safe. She's got a sniper rifle. She's way back. Like, she dances around, does all kind of acrobatics. Really cool class. But her party synergies are less strong than a War Dance's party synergies. And I think this is kind of it's cool. So it's like basically every class in that game has some kind of team buff, which I think is cool as well, because like if you're not doing well, or you're under geared, you're having a bad day or whatever, like you do something that helps the squad, which I think is like a really cool like just sort of mental hook where you're like, well, this guy was bad, but like the artillerist gave us like doubled stagger damage, and so we stunned the boss. Like, good job, use your Q, you did it, right? Like I think that's like really cool, really compelling, that even if you're doing really, really horribly, you have something you can provide to the team. I like this in League of Legends as well. Like Ashe has CC, Varus has CC, Vayne has some, Draven has a knock-up. Like even like the really selfish solo AD carries still have some team benefits. Tanks have a ton, right? But I like the idea of theming their benefits. So it's like, oh yeah, Garen and Darius and all these juggernauts have armor shreds or something, right? Where it's like, it's thematic to a Juggernaut who wants to fight and kill a tank in lane because they play top lane against champions like Maokai and Malphite and Sion. But also in a team fight, oh yeah, you pick me to counter tanks. Trundle, right? Like all these champions who siphon off and like shred through tanks, like that's a really cool idea. And the idea of party synergies as an idea and saying, hey, I think Juggernaut should have anti-tank party synergies. And just like, hey, by the way, Marksman, you're not allowed to have armor shreds. But like there's a reason Black Cleaver exists. Black Cleaver is like a great Juggernaut item, right? Here's health, here's haste, here's raw AD, and by the way, here's armor shred for your entire team. Like that's great, right? I think that's really, really cool, and I want to see more of that. I wouldn't mind if like more AD carries somehow had reason to give their team attack speed buffs, so that a Juggernaut is really hyped that Varus over there giving everyone attack speed. Like Sivir used to do this, by the way. Sivir are used to give move speed and attack speed to the team. And okay, auras are pretty invisible power and they're kind of shitty. But like, I like the idea. And again, the problem is auras have invisible power. People don't like, it is going to be really hard for people to know, hey, by the way, Olaf is giving you 25% bonus damage because he had his Q, right? Who's like, I want you to tell me when you play solo queue next week, how many of your teammates know that you helped them do more damage because you landed Olaf Q? Right? And most people won't, like, to be clear, right? So, like, that's the problem with this, is that it's really invisible, and that sucks. There are solves, but they're not easy solves. But the idea of giving a selfish class a party synergy, I think is really interesting. So I think that's cool. Anyway, this is all to come back to, I like this. It's a cool change. It fits thematically, I think, pretty well as well. Next part of Olaf is he gets an entirely new W. Oh, yeah, so by the way, mana cost is down, damage down, so we can do other numbers on that real quick. So Olaf Q damage is down early and equal late. Level 9 onwards, the bonus AD ratio is the same. The base damage level at rank 5 is the same. But weaker early, equal or better late. This is, instead of just doing like, here's the mana cost before and after, because we can all see what the mana cost is. It's 400 to 60 instead of 60. Like, this isn't hard to do. This is the mana cost of the Q as a function of his total mana pool. Because his total mana pool went up a few charts ago, the Q goes from being 1/3 of his mana to being, the price is down 1/3 of his mana to the price is down 12% of his mana pool. I just think it was kind of interesting, so I did it this way because it appealed to me. I thought it was kind of cool. Okay. Olaf has a new W called Tough It Out. Not Vicious Strike, it's all Tough It Out. The cooldown now scales the rank pretty aggressively, which means you might consider maxing W second. I don't believe you will, but, I'm not sure, right? Just kind of keep that in mind. Attack speed is still 10% per rank, keep in mind. So W has an additive amount of attack speed, so a 10% attack speed loss means less and less and less the higher level you are. If you are level 1, this is a loss of 10% attack speed, period. You go from dealing 1.5 to 1.4, it's a loss of like 7% of your attack speed. Close enough though, right? But like by late game, it's a loss of like, 5 to 4% of your attack speed. So, level 18 is not a very big nerf. But the duration is down pretty substantially, so you are losing a lot of damage to this ability. Like, there's no debate. Like, yes, the uptime is higher, but like, even though the cooldown is going to be lower at level 18, less attack speed, less duration, you are likely dealing less damage. That said, by the time this is happening, your passive has scaled to give you more damage, and your AD growth has scaled to give you more damage. So, like, it's fine, right? Ability ratio down. Okay, sure. Reset attack timer. That's neat. So it's an attack reset. That's highly skillful. Cool beans. On activation, Olaf now gains a 10 to 150 point shield. That is also scaled by 1/4 missing health, but is capped. That missing health shield is capped at 1/3 of his current health. So that roughly maths out to casting it at just below half HP is the maximum value of the shield. The actual number, I meant to do it and didn't. And since we're live on Twitch, like, if I was doing it just pure YouTube, I would pause, do the math, and come back, and here you go, we got the thing. I don't have the lecture right now. My instinct is it's around, like, 40-something%. So, like, let's say you're missing 60, right, and you're at 40%. 1/4 of 60% is 15%, right? 16%, if we take 0.3 of 40, is 24%. No, hold on. 30% of 40% is 12%. Is my math, like, hard trolling? Wow, hold on. Okay, yeah, so you can be a little bit lower. So if you're at 40% max HP, if you're at 40% max HP, you can only ever shield for 12% of your max health. The incoming shield would have been, it would have been 15% of your max health, but if you're at 40%, you can only ever actually shield for 12% of max health. So it's actually more like 45%. It's around 45% max HP. Pretty sure I'm right about that one. So like 45% max HP is probably about right. So 45% times 0.3 is going to be like 15.5. 55, a quarter fifth of, yeah, it's about 45% max HP. So it's like the literal optimal shield timing is just below half health. But like if you're uber low, you're at 1% max HP, you literally get no shield plus 10. So this will not save you if you're almost dead. This caps out around 45% max health. Again, my mistake for not having this here. Lifesteal has been moved over to something else. Here is the W lifesteal, by the way. Here's the cooldown change, right? Again, I'm assuming we're maxing it last. That could be wrong, but I'm assuming that. So here is the lifesteal before and after. So keep in mind that W had an uptime, right? It was on for 6, off for 10. Now it's on at basically all times. Now, to be fair, this is the maximum possible lifesteal if you're at 0 HP. That is not fair. That is not accurate. But in the best possible scenario here, which is this, and then this is assuming 100% uptime, which is also fraudulent, this would be the break-even point. So again, this is up about 1/3 of the time. This is not at full value. We can say it's at it's at 2/3 value because you're at 2/3 most of the time. I don't know what to tell you, but like these are the best case scenario numbers for both sides, and then being aware that it's not always up and it's not always as strong. Good luck, because I can't tell you what it's going to be in the real world, right? Ragnarok gets some changes as well. So bonus stack damage goes from 15, 20, 25 to 10, 20, 30. So better late, worse early. I've seen that before. Duration is only 3 seconds, but hitting a champion with a basic attack or E extends the duration. So you can keep going, a 2.5 second duration. Keep in mind this matches the Zhonya's durations. You can Zhonya's an Olaf and he gets tired. Keep that in mind, right? Now the passive resists, worse early equal late. I've seen this before. Let's do the math. Olaf R attack damage. So this is the math on while R is active, where am I at? And this, by the way, I believe also assumes he is with items. I don't remember if I did with items or not. This is still going to be relatively realistic. Keep in mind that that level 11 of this ability is the same flat value of 20. The percent AD ratio is lower, but he's got more attack damage because as Olaf, he's gained more levels and has more stuff going on. So weaker early, better late. The passive resists, right? Down by 10, down by 5, down by 0. But he has gained more bonus health through a function of his base stat gain. So weaker 1 through 10, well, 6 through 10, because you don't have an ultimate level 6. And while the ultimate is off, he is more durable from 11 through 18. While the ultimate is on, he has more attack damage, 11 through 18. So weaker early, stronger late. So cool changes, right? So a bunch of weaker early, a bunch of stronger late. A lot of stuff that is really hard to just do it without playing. Uptime on lifesteal, uptime on attack speed, hard to know. Again, the shield should be hit at about 45%, but cool stuff overall, right? All right, next up is the next mid-scope rework, which is Taliyah. A bunch of big changes here. So health and health regen, mana and mana regen, armor, and move speed, and we're going to roll in the passive move speed as well, which is moving faster near rocks. Okay, here is health and health per minute for Taliyah. Her health is down by 31. That is a pretty meaningful hit for the early game. Her health per minute is down pretty meaningfully, as well as regen is actually down more starkly than her base health is. So definitely frailer in lane, definitely can be poked out more or all-in more in lane. Now she also lost some armor, so here's her total physical durability against burst damage. Right, takes, from 637 to 590 total physical damage will kill her at level 1, not counting things like Doran's Ring. Her amount of, if you're poking her with physical damage, Min's hitting her, you're attacking her as Zed or Jace or Yasuo or whatever, she regens health against armor, right, poorly as well. This is actually down. So if you're poking her out, right, she's 8% less durable. If you're bursting her down, she's 4% less durable, right? And in the middle of those two numbers is, the part that really matters for you. But, like, regen matters, poke matters, and this happens, right? Here is her mana and her mana per minute. So her base mana is up, her mana regen is down. This is a tuning lever that helps mid lane versus support. So the amount of base mana you have doesn't really change how your class functions. Seraph doesn't interact with champion base mana in any way. It's only bonus mana. But supports by a Spell Thief's Edge. And Spell Thieves comes, which you can see down at the bottom of the screen right there, comes with plus 50% base mana regen. So the more of your mana budget is in base mana versus mana regen, or conversely, the more that your mana budget is in mana regen versus base mana, the more that you are attuned to support items. So if you bring up base mana and bring down mana regen, you have nerfed a support Taliyah without necessarily nerfing non-support Taliyah, right? Ones who aren't buying mana regen, because Spell Thief is 60% and Frostbite is 75%. So here is the mana regen across 4 minutes. So 4 minutes to me is a really good heuristic for how long a champion sits out and actually plays the game. Because if you walk in a lane, minions spawn, you beat them at like 135, you lane until 535, you recall at level 6, you buy Last Chapter, you keep playing, that's 4 minutes of laning. That's going to be pretty accurate to, we played out of the map, we reset for a dragon fight, took a dragon fight, and then played the game out. Hey, dragon respawns 5 minutes after it dies, so we respawn 4 minutes before it respawns, that's 4 minutes later, and we walk out back to the map. And 4 minutes tends to be a pretty good idea of how long you are spending mana in one, like, turn, right? One round out on the map without recalling. I think it's a pretty good idea. Obviously, it could be higher, obviously, it could be lower, but, like, you got to pick a number somewhere, and I pick 4 minutes. I think it's actually pretty good. And you see that, mid Taliyah is, in this context, very, very slightly down in mana, right? But like 2 to 3% less mana, not a huge deal, not a really big hit, not ultimately that big of a deal. But if you look at support Taliyah with a Spell Thieves, and of course you could even do it bigger with you could exacerbate this with Frostfang with, if you're like gonna go Ardent Sensor or something, or any other of these support items that have mana on them, Redemption, things like that. You can see that the difference is a little bit more stark, right? Instead of losing 2%, she loses 5% of her mana. Instead of losing 3%, she loses 4% of her mana. Again, these aren't huge changes, to be clear, they're not. But it is more of a nerf to support than it is to mid lane. Okay. And then we have the move speed one. This is her total out of combat move speed. I don't know what this is. This is the same thing. I don't know what this is. Maybe this is the wrong thing to copy down. I don't know. Maybe I'm trolling. Oh, it's actually the same thing again. Okay, we're just going to delete this. This is not relevant. Okay. Taliyah out of combat move speed. Clean this up real quick because we don't need this info. So this is assuming her base move speed, which again got changed from 335 to 330, right? This is using her rock surfing passive, which got changed from 2045 linear to 10 for the first 8 levels, then only 20, which is still only equaling the rank 1 value at 9, and then it scales really hard at 12 and again at 15. And it scales really hard at 15, right? So, hey, how fast is Taliyah at roaming? Well, not very, right? Weaker early, better late. She is much less of a stronger roamer because, hey, 1 through 8, she has a 10% move speed buff. That is not large. It exists. It's of value, but, a thing, right? So way less good roaming. Okay. It does fall off more slowly, so there is some non-trivial amount of power in this, where when you get off the rocks, you still keep some more move speed. That's cool. Great. Alrighty, so then we have a full page of text on Threaded Volley. Okay, so mana cost is down, cooldown is down. Cover that real quick. Here's the cost and cooldown. The cost is better from level 7 onwards. The cooldown is better at all points of time. Keep in mind, this cost is buffed by way more than her mana pool got nerfed, right? So her mana costs are in fact less constrained after the first 6 levels, right? Once you are level 7 plus, your mana costs are less constrained, but considering the 4-minute mana pool got nerfed, it is in fact weaker from 1 to 6, and then better late. So weaker early, better late. We keep that going. Cooldown, obviously, 3 to 2.5 is more of a buff later than it is early. Better late. Okay, so then we have 1 rock and 5 rock damage, okay? So if you just land a single rock, you shoot it out, the damage has changed. It got really hit in the early game, and it's less nerfed at rank 5. 5 rock damage, again, actually has more fall off than before, so really hit early, hit less bad late. Let's check out the numbers on this one. There's a chance that my math was wrong, but I don't think it is. So yeah, 81 plus, so right, here's your 1 rock damage before and after. Keep in mind the numbers get relatively close at rank 5. The AP ratio is up, so even though the base damage is down by 40, the increased AP ratio makes it make up eventually some of that gap, right? And so we get pretty close by the end game, but we're really not quite there, right? The 1 through 9 is pretty substantially nerfed. I mean, level 1 is really nerfed for just landing 1 rock, but it gets better and better and better, and we catch up and catch up and catch up. Now, if we go ultra late, which is sub-repetitive games where we get more than death cap, we go 4 items, 5 items, we can eventually get there. But we go from 378 AP, doubles the damage of the ability, which is just a touch weak of a ratio, but like not really bad, to 260 AP to double, which is a very aggressive ratio. So Taliyah is really, really aggressively pushed towards buying things like Shadow Flame, which have 115 AP on them, towards buying things like Death Cap, which has 200 AP on it, and away from things like Void Staff, which has relatively low AP for its cost. And then this is the expected damage of a full Q. I believe this to be the accurate numbers overall. I could be wrong, but I believe we're right. But basically, this does, so basically you do 2.6x the damage versus dealing 3x the damage. Now there's a chance I did something slightly wrong here. No, we did it right, yeah. So we go from doing triple damage to dealing 2.6x the damage. So here are your numbers, right? Again, the AP ratios are exactly the same as far as AP to double. But again, you can see that because the multi-rock scaling got hit down, this ability went from doing 700 damage to 500 damage. It's still wild that a, right from ability does 500 damage, but it does deal AoE again, by the way, because keep in mind, stones now deal bonus to monsters. They have fall against monsters. I didn't do any math here. I don't know the tuning around this. I could have. I chose not to. I do not know how Jungle Taliyah is affected. Clearly, they have intentionally added a monster mod to Threaded Volley. So they are going to tune monster clearing, right? Clearly, they're going to tune monster clearing. They are flattening the damage reduction to the same thing as other places, right? It's the same flat damage reduction, so that they remove this lever and instead say, look, we have a flat monster lever, we're going to do it that way. This actually feels relatively clean to me. I like flat monster added reduced in some cases. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion here, but like, I'm cool with it. They have a jungle tuning lever. They are intentionally adding a jungle tuning lever, and it's going to be this one. Fair enough, right? And by the way, the explosion is back. The stone shard explosion is back. The wave clear is back. Early damage is down. But you still have a level 9 ability that will one-shot the melee minion wave, right? 518 is about right for one-shotting the melee minions. So, pretty big deal there. You can now Threaded Volley during Zonias. That certainly matters. Casted Threaded Volley on work ground is now a new mechanic. So instead of shooting out 1 rock on a low cooldown with 1 mana cost, which is kind of trash, it now fires a boulder that deals double damage. And it slows in a bigger radius, 175 becomes 225. And that slow is, not trivial. Keep in mind that her base cooldown is 2.5 seconds, so if I throw a workground boulder at you, or if I have haste, I can start throwing my 5-piece volley at you while you're still slowed. Now it's level 9 plus, it's going to take a while, but it's going to make landing my W easier, it's going to make landing E and shit easier. This is a very big deal. Now it consumes the work ground, so we go back to doing regular stuff, but like this is such a big deal. This, I mean, you can't really math it appropriately, but let's see what we have going on here. Well, here was her old Q1 rock damage. It was dog shit. Sorry, here we go. Here is the old Q1 rock damage. Here's the new Q1 rock damage. Oh, this is way better. This is way better. Wow. Okay, so yeah, technically, I do in fact deal less damage here, and I do less damage here. My cooldown's better, my mana cost is better. But then I get Big Boulder Q, which is a really big deal. A really, really, really big deal. Up to every other Q is this. If I don't want it, I can always do unworked Qs, which again are weaker. But like, this really, really matters. This really, really, really matters. Worked ground duration of 30 seconds. Minimum cooldown on worked ground is 0.75 seconds. So just in case that like you had it pulled down somehow, whatever. Interesting stuff, right? Interesting stuff here. Work ground is also very much larger. It's meant to be more of a bonus. Certainly it does pretty good damage. Like keep in mind that like the boulder does 100 to 575, which is like not even that much lower than this, right? Like this is 2.6x damage. This is 2x damage. So you're losing, 6/20ths of your damage, I think. So something like that. I mean, like, yeah, again, this does more, but I mean, this does 30% more damage, but this slows in a bigger area. Like, work Q is pretty good. Cool. And it has new stuff. So, update to Seismic Shove, pretty small one. I mean, it definitely matters. So, radius larger, cost down, cooldown down if you max it, but it doesn't deal damage anymore. So, I'm assuming you're still going to max W last. But, like, hey, that's okay, because, hey, by the way, the cooldown and cost and radius all got buffed. So W is a better ability except for the damage, which, to be fair, we're maxing it last, so we're not losing that much damage. We're losing some, but we're losing some damage. W does less damage. And then eventually, as you get more accident, you lose more damage, but like, okay, right? Unsurprisingly, 0% more damage. Duh. 0% damage. But usability very, very up. Again, knock radius stuff definitely matters. Cooldown definitely matters. Unraveled Earth, now a big setup as well. This is likely to be max second, probably still will be. Cooldown actually nerfed for that. Damage is buffed, at least the flat damage is buffed. Slow strength. To equalize by those would be 200 ability power. Which like is pretty reachable, honestly. So this is, I would say, largely a nerf to the slow. Like at level 1, you have some AP. And then by the time you hit rank 2, if you're level 8 with 100 ability power, if you're level 8 with 50 ability power, which you are, this is a nerf. So at pretty much most to all points in time, this is a nerf to the slow. Doesn't have to matter. It's whatever. I don't mind removing the AP ratio off of slow in general. I think that's like, it's pretty dangly, so I don't mind getting rid of that. But boulder detonation damage is getting dropped early and increased late. This is actually a pretty respectable AP ratio of 350. Pretty reasonable there. Damage per subsequent boulder hit going up. So again, lower early, better late, plus 20 per rank up instead of plus 10 per rank up. I'm glad they're doing that because like so much of Leah's damage was absurdly front loaded and she had nothing to do at level 13. After level 13, I'm glad it's getting better. So maximum boulder damage is going, well, you can see here, substantially down early, but a little bit closer late, though with a lower AP ratio. So let's look at the math. So obviously, again, we lost W damage. Here's where E cooldown, equal, and then worse. And then here is E1 damage. So if they get out, your damage is higher. Cool beans. But a full combo of E. And by the way, this is W plus E damage. This is everything all included, right? If I land W plus E and you hit the max number of rocks, my damage is down by a lot. Like a lot. A lot, right? So like my selfish solo Q does less damage. My WE does less damage. And just like not for debate, just deals less damage. My Q cooldown is lower though. My W cooldown is lower. Keep in mind, right? Like our E cooldown is like 16 to 8. Our W cooldown was sitting there at 16 forever. And now it's 14. So like, once we have, rank 2 of E, like our W still keeps up with that, which like matters, right? And then like once we're done, we're getting, to level 12, to 12 points in this. Well, don't worry about it. By level 14, we still keep up. So, uptime is up for the WE combo. E by it's like, here's the funny thing, right? Like, so E by itself has higher uptime pre-patch, but W plus E has higher uptime post-patch. So the burst damage is down, but you get more chances to cast it. W hits more reliably, and it's up more often. So that matters some, right? That, you know, the numbers are there to some degree. You have to compare them. Good luck. But there's the numbers for you, right? Now, some other fun stuff going on. It now spreads out sort of more vertically. Delay between casting first row bonus, it's right away. They roll out more slowly. They roll out more vertically instead of more horizontally. They sort of, you know, it's longer instead of wider, basically. If you they now stun people who dash through them, by the way. So I don't know if this is... So I think this is if you dash through it, not if I shove you through it. I could be wrong. I know someone knows because this has been on PBE. I haven't been. But the interesting thing is they don't self-detonate. So as wave clear, this isn't really here anymore. You have to shove the minions through it. As monster clear, it's not there anymore. Like, this definitely matters. This definitely does something. Because, like, for Taliyah, her level 2 jungle clear is I learn E, I press E on Raptors or Krugs or whatever, and I press Q and hit stuff. These don't blow up anymore. That said, when clearing Raptors, your Q blows up and deals a bunch of damage, and keep in mind that E1 deals 10 more damage with a higher AP ratio. So, like, you still get a lot of that anyway. So, cool stuff, right? Definitely really interesting. I mean, stunning people who dash through it, definitely pretty valuable stuff. Super on board. Next up, a change to the ult. I've seen this before. Weaker early, better late, minus 500, equal, plus 500. Dash range jumping off, massively increased. Dash speed when jumping off, also massively increased. So, 4 over 10, 7 over 12. This, technically, you're spending more time hopping off, but you are going farther and faster. So I'm not going to say it's like a nerf because it's not in any way. But interesting, you can spend more time hopping off the wall, I guess, theoretically. Moving to Taliyah running the wall causes Taliyah to dash the location clicked up to the maximum dash range that is dropping her perpendicular to the wall. Ah, nice. So you can like click kind of at an angle and she'll go that way instead of just hopping left, hopping right. That's good. So you get a lot more control about where you land. This is a very big deal. I think this will actually mean quite a lot. Getting a lot more choice over where you end up is definitely pretty useful. And it's now more forgiving going through terrain, so you can like jump over the Krug pit or whatever more reliably. Damage to enemy champion structure now prevents from casting R for 3 seconds. Oh, sorry, damage from. So she can't cast it mid-combat. She can't even try. She can't put the wall at mid-combat. But taking damage doesn't knock her off, so if you start... I'm not even sure a root would stop you. Like, I think if you get to cast double R, you are out of there and this was a knockup. That's a really big deal for like, oh, it's a gank. I'm out. That's scary, you know? That could be really scary. All right. Well, here's the quick data on R range. Not a lot of surprise here. Again, keep in mind that her move speed was nerfed until level 15. So, like, she is worse at roaming until here, which is quite late into the game. But also, I mean, we saw this with the old Tom Kench ult range changes. People get really surprised by, like, large increases to ranges in the late game. And it's like, oh, Taliyah ult goes that far? Wow, I didn't know that. Like, people are going to be surprised by this. All right, so we get some pretty simple nerfs here. RA 2 seconds on the Charm cooldown. A flat 10 seconds on the Spirit Rush cooldown. That means more late game, of course. 80 becomes 90, not something too big here. Braum gets a per target buff to his passive. This bumps at 7 and 13, so you're not going to feel it for a while, but eventually you will have the ability to put a new stun on a target in a mid to long duration team fight. I mean, 4 is pretty meaningful, so if you get to 13, this will really be felt. This, I mean, it matters. It's text, it's value, but it's not huge. This is damage taken during the E. So DR goes from 30 to 40, becomes 35 to 55. That's a pretty big deal. This is how much damage he's actually taking during the spell. So it doesn't mean a ton at lower ranks, but if he does get to 13, max it out, he's taking 1/4 less damage during that spell. So instead of taking like 600 damage, he'll take 450. That can matter quite a lot. Hecarim is getting a buff. Of course, he is in a really bad spot after the recent nerf to his Q in 12.6, I think it was. So they're buffing the AD ratio. Unfortunately, it is not anywhere close to as big of a nerf as he got. So I plugged in a pretty reasonable calculation for how much AD he'll normally have. I put in 180 bonus attack damage at level 18, which is like 3 to 4 attack damage items, right? Like, that's a Maw and a Sterix and a Triforce and like a Warhammer. Like, it's actually a pretty meaningful amount of damage, right? Okay, the real build is like, you know, Triforce plus Death Stance plus GA. Okay, sure, but like, we're close enough, right? So, okay, just patch to patch, we do 1 to 3% more damage. Good job, we did it. But this is 12.5 to 12.9, accounting for bonus AD. And, I mean, it's not horrible, but we still lost up to 9% of our Q damage, even on AD builds. So AD Hecarim is still definitively weaker in 12.9 than he was in 12.5. Now, AD Hecarim might have been OP in 12.5. That's likely true. But like, hey, by the way, he's not back to where he was. Master Yi getting a small late game nerf. Late game tends to be low elo skewed. Ults, I'm not sure if ults tend to be low elo skewed. But instead of getting 20 attack speed per rank, he gets 10% attack speed per rank. I am not certain if Master Yi R is additive or multiplicative attack speed. For some reason, I thought it was multiplicative, but it doesn't seem to be, according to the unofficial wiki. But, you know, the nerf kicks in from level 11 onwards. Worth noting that Master Yi has very, very low attack speed growth as a champion. Most of attack speed actually comes from the ult and his item buys. And his base attack is very, very high, which I think is a totally reasonable way to design a champion like this. This is not a complaint. I think it's actually a good thing. It makes his itemization, like, sort of correct. It makes bruiser items worse, right? Because it makes Kraken Slayer a very big DPS increase compared to Titanic Hydra, which is what he needs. Like, he needs items like Witsend, Ruin King, and Kraken to be good on him. So, you know, low attack speed growth, but high attack speed ratio makes that true. Good job there. But yeah, you know, more of a late game focused nerf. Okay, understandable. Nidalee has been taking over high elo. I don't play in D2 to Challenger, so I don't see that, but 30 base off of Nidalee. Early game tends to be high elo skewed. Also, 540 is totally reasonable for this kind of a champion. Seems fine here. She has pretty high health growth, but health growth tends to help lower elo players. So, you know, she has a little bit of wonky stacks, but like in a way that, you know, she'll help the right players. So Pike gets some pretty meaningful changes. He is now going to store even more gray health in a support lane. So trying to buff support Pike a little bit there. Won't help top or mid Pike that much. Bone Skewer now costs more mana, but has a bigger refund, which now works both when you hold Q and just let it dissipate, or if you hit an enemy champion. And so we can look at the math real quick. If you're just spamming Qs and hitting minions, or missing entirely, your mana costs are up. But if you're hitting enemy champions, your mana costs are down. Now, it's worth noting you have to hit, you know, this is what, 12 mana off or 6 mana off? Like, this is 4 hits per miss for it to be a buff. And this is, it makes it still 12, right? Roughly. 12 off, 20 on. 2 hits per miss at max rank. So, there's your math, right? Again, 6 versus 24, which is 4 to 1. This is 12 versus 20, 2 to 1, right? So if you have to hit 3 to 1 for support Pike to not be nerfed by this, by the way, right? 3 or 4 to 1 to not be nerfed by support Pike. So just FYI, right? Death from below gets a 20 times second cooldown cut. No longer receives bonus gold on Pike himself if you got the kill. But still gives it to allies. No longer receives additional Your Cut when people kill from within the execution area. So they're removing some of the random like extra gold generation. They're getting rid of that on him. We'll see if that matters more for support or mid, but these did feel a little vestigial, so I don't mind it. And again, lower cooldown should feel pretty good for him. And it's front-loaded lower cooldown, which should help support more than mid. They probably could have done 100 to 80 and just 190, 80, but like, whatever. All right, Renata Glask loses 2 armor and is a bit less damage with her passive against, so when marked and against marked targets. So this is, of course, going to apply both, right? Once and then the other time. So here's the cooldown change, by the way. Again, a little bit front-loaded. Okay, great. So Renata Glask armor down by 2. Her physical durability is down by 1.6% to 1.2%. Not gigantic, but it's going to tap her down a little bit. As far as the passive damage, this is assuming a relatively generic target with like 580 to 200 HP based on level. And of course, this will apply twice when she hits and when a teammate hits. She gets, 2 procs. And so, yeah, the damage difference is not that big. Keep in mind, though, that it stopped scaling around level, like, 8, I think. Level 9. And then the old one kept scaling to 13, so, you know, this part right here is where you lose a lot of the power, and then it's going to be just, you know, flat down here. But, you know, early on not hit that hard, but this is more of a solo queue focused nerf in that it is a little bit more late game skewed. Fair enough. I mean, she's fine in pro play as far as I can tell. She's played some, but nerf overall, okay, sure. Next up, we get a much smaller scale update to Renekton, but trying to get him out of pro jail, which is the continued tactic of buff the late game, nerf the early game, or at least buff the late game straight up. His win rate is low, and he's not getting played in pro, so he could be buffed in all places right now. 5 more health growth, 0.4 more AD growth. And what does it mean for his health? It means his health is up pretty meaningfully. 2239 is not even that absurd for a melee champion. He is a fighter. He can't quite be a diver. I don't know, he could almost be a diver. He's not quite a juggernaut. He's like kind of in between the two. But, you know, solid health. This is pretty solid AD for a fighter as well. These seem like pretty reasonable numbers to have on a champion of his caliber. So good to see these numbers go up. These are definitely, of course, buffs. They're then making a change to his W. W's cooldown is higher early, and then better very, very late. Damage is equal early, and then better late. And so what does that mean for the damage? Well, it means, again, cooldown is higher until level 12, and then it's buffed from 13. Worse early, better late, right? Nerf pro, buff solo queue. This is, I mean, this change in isolation is a nerf to Renekton, to be clear. But the damage is up. Keep in mind that because this has a total AD ratio, flat AD buffs to the champion, which we have, buff the damage of this ability. The rank up, of course, also matters. So you kind of put them together, and it's worse early, and then from about here, better late, right? Better from about level 10 onwards. And then Dominus does 1 quarter more damage. Definitely the damage scales pretty aggressively with rank. So this, I would argue, means more at rank 2 and 3, but percentage-wise, it's the same. But yeah, trying to give him some more cool late-game stuff to do. Rengar. 20 damage off the bonus damage to monsters toggle. I mean, functionally, this is a, hey, Rengar's doing a little bit too well in jungle. We can slow clear speed down a little bit. It's a nerf to Rengar, who's doing too well. Riot doesn't hate Rengar. Riot just balances champions. And people have victim complexes sometimes. Shyvana has some cool stuff. W tick rate at every 0.5 seconds is kind of nice. I think dots every half second feel usually pretty good as a dot, so it just kind of makes them feel more responsive. I think it's a good thing there. It does do a little bit weird things around kiting, where like theoretically it was possible to kite in between W ticks, and it makes it feel better. Really just makes it feel better. That's the important part. Whatever. This can theoretically do some positive things with jungle items, where, you know, if you were to miss a tick, you would start ticking with jungle item late. Or if you can get a tick, you know, a half second later, you can maybe finish executing a jungle monster with damage with like jungle item tick. That is theoretically possible, I believe. Overall, though, pretty small stuff here. What's nice is Dragon E now applies the % health damage mark that you use your auto attacks on. When you throw out Dragon E and the pool's on the ground and someone walks into it, it'll mark them, which I think is right. It's a very minor change, but it's a good change. It should work this way, so I'm glad it does. Sion does 60% less damage to structures in his passive. Yep. We all know what this is about. Goodbye. Thresh gets more ability power and armor per soul. That's pretty nice. This is the highest this number's ever been. Thresh used to... the way this used to work is it would give you 1 for your very first soul. It would slowly taper off. I think down to like something like 0.5 per soul. That got the nerf to 0.7 flat to make him less strong early game and eventually better late game. And now it's being brought up to 1 flat, and this is stronger than the passive's ever been. The shield now scales with 2 per soul. Realistically, this could be an AP ratio. Maybe they're worried about AP, like death cap Thresh being like really wonky. This is understandable. But I always find it weird when the game like has obvious things that like, worth pointing out, by the way, that like, because I believe, yeah, it always feels like a little weird to me, and it's not like a problem that like, here's Rise. Rise gains bonus AP based on mana and mana based on AP, and we're not gonna have just an AP ratio, but a mana ratio on your abilities. But mana already gives AP. Why do we need a mana ratio when an AP ratio does that, right? Like, that just feels weird to me. And then here's Dark Passage. We're like, here, we give you ability power. Ability power is meant to scale your abilities. Not this one. Just feels a little strange, but again, like, the problem is like, well, we don't want Death Cap Thresh to be a thing. I don't know. It's really minor, but like, this really could have had, you know, an AP ratio. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really matter, but just like, I think maybe, you know, whatever. All right, well, but the flat value is the same, so just better late game shielding on Thresh, more overall armor and ability power on Thresh. This will definitely be a late game buff to Thresh, of course. So Varus, right now on the live patch, W second Varus and E second Varus are within a 0.5% win rate of each other. So some version of on-hit Varus or auto-attack Varus is really, 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 really close in power level to most versions of caster Varus. So it's close. You can pretty much play either one, I think. And they're doing a lot. This probably puts on-hit Varus, or just at least auto-attack WMAX Varus, as the best version of the champion. So the easy change is Blighted Quiver. Goes from 3.5 damage per rank to 5 damage per rank, which gives us this. The W second on-hit damage is up 1.5 per rank, which is not trivial. This is, by the way, assuming some reasonable calculation of bonus AD / bonus on-hit damage. This is not using Rage Blade, which of course would further cement W as a lot of damage, but a pretty good approximation of actual damage that he would grow, and it's as much damage per auto attack. This should be accurate numbers. His actual AD is pretty reasonably high. But then also, the way his passive works is when he kills a minion, he gains 20% bonus attack speed, right? So, you know, if his base attack speed is like 0.7, he would gain 0.14 attacks per second. That's not the right numbers, but like it's close enough, right? It also then takes his bonus attack speed from sources, which, it depends how it's coded. Usually this only means items and runes, and multiplies those sources by 1.2 instead of 1.15. Now, it might also multiply his attack speed growth from character levels. I don't know for sure, but it basically bumps that multiplication. So if you're building pure lethality, there is no buff here. There is no buff here if you are pure lethality. But if you, so by the way, also at this point, like, these numbers should just be like, hey, this should just be, here's 20% multiplicative attack speed, and here's 40% multiplicative attack speed. That would be a sort of cleaner presentation at that point, and would, I think, just make a good amount of sense. And I would prefer they do it that way, because that, it makes sense to players. Just say, hey, multiplicatively, and just like takes your attacks per second, it's like that number now. Like that's, I think, a better version of the tooltip here, but that's what it is, basically, is that now when you get a kill on an enemy champion, or you assist a kill on an enemy champion, you get 40% multiplicative attack speed. Then if you kill a minion, you get 20% purely, fully multiplicative attack speed. A little bit lower on the front end when you're really early game, but that's overall what's going on there. Okay. Hullbreaker is getting a change that needed from the very start. I talked about this from the very beginning when we had the Mythic item update a year and a half ago. I am a fan of items having a flat value of levels roughly 1 through 9. 1 through 11 is fine. I don't care. But that, to me, is how you let yourself balance an item that you want to scale. Because keep in mind, an item can't be completed before level 5 anyway. So, like, why does this scale from level 1 through 5, right? And then you're like, oh, it's 20 to 60 armor. You know, we want the item to scale. It's like, well, but you don't buy it to level 10, so it's really 40 to 60 armor. And if you're 40 to 60 armor, why are you scaling by 20 over, like, such a small portion of the game? Like, what are you actually getting out of that? Like, why does that matter, right? Like, that's not even a lever at that point. But if you say, no, it's 10, and then we scale it, okay, cool. And, you know, the designer is choosing to do manual scaling, plus 15, plus 8, plus 8, plus 8, plus 8, plus 8. They're saying, hey, look, you know, at 12, it's pretty trash. At 13, it gets a lot of power. At 14, we're now catching up, right? But it's like, you can buy it at 11, it's kind of bad. You can buy it at 12, it's kind of bad. But at 13, you're actually kind of getting there. Like, that's what those numbers are really doing, right? It's a big jump right then, which says, hey, this is going to be a weak first item and a pretty weak second item into level 13. And that's when it starts to catch up, which is fine to me. That makes sense. You know, having this nonlinear scaling allows you to say, no, it's fucking 10 for a while, and then it spikes plus 10, then it spikes plus 15. And, you know, yes, this could have been 10, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, you know, and then go, but, like, I don't care if it's nonlinear. That's all right. Anyway, and then, you know, seeing, okay, 10 to 75, right? Like, okay, 2060 became, 10 to 75, right? That still sells the player on, oh, this scales pretty aggressively, and the numbers under the hood, to me, actually makes sense. It's still halved for ranged champions. And then, hey, instead of bonus damage from all sources against structures, it's only 20% bonus damage attacks. So I don't know if that affects things like Lichbane. I don't know if that affects... I can't think of any obvious spells. Maybe things like Nasus Q might count as a spell, or like not count as an attack. I'm not sure how it all works out, but anyway, here is Hullbreaker's bonus armor and MR given. Again, it's really unpurchasable, levels 1 through 6. I think 7 is a pipe dream as well in a lot of cases, but I'm including as inclusive number as possible. So yeah, this 20 to 60 scaling item is really a 40 to 60 scaling item, as I said. And so yes, the amount of value this item gives you is heavily, heavily, heavily dropped if you buy it first. If you buy it second around here, it's not bad. If you buy it third around here, it's as good or better. And that is the intent, right? That like this is meant to be picked up as a more capstone kind of item. Where it does there. On PvE, it counted empowered auto attacks, but didn't. It didn't count empowered attacks, but it did count Sheen. Okay, thank you. So that's what Twitch chat has told me as how that works, which makes sense to me. So it doesn't affect Nasus Q, but it will affect the Sheen part of Nasus Q functionally. Or if you like use an E and then auto attack, it'll pull the Sheen in. Okay, cool. Great, thank you for that. So that is the individual changes to the patch. Let us TLDR. There's a lot going on. 12.9 has quite a bit going on. Some pretty big mid-scope reworks. Let's talk about them. So Olaf is basically better late, worse early, and better late, and the lifesteal is on the passive now. Undertow has a longer cooldown if you miss, a flat 3-second cooldown from when you cast it if you would hit. Damage is down a little bit early on, but it now has an armor shred, and overall mana cost is lower. So a little bit less spammy, but overall more powerful for the kit. Also has some team synergy. W now has a shield attached to it. The math is roughly optimal shielding is casting at 45% max HP, less than half, more than 40%, somewhere in the middle there. That's kind of where you're trying to cast the shield, about that half point mark, which, hey, by the way, considering that your passive attack speed growth caps out at 30% health left, that's a pretty good time to cast your shield. Resets the attack timer, a bit less attack speed, bit lower duration, lower cooldown though at higher ranks. Overall, pretty cool ability. Again, lifesteal move to the passive, giving a shield, definitely a pretty big deal. Ragnarok, worse early, better late. -5 equal +5. Counting the total attack damage buffs, this is actually more damage when Ragnarok is on. The duration is down substantially, but if you auto attack, you can keep it going. This is a very intense window of can you ever kite him for long enough. Now, if you can kite him for 3 seconds, you are out, you are safe, keep -3 seconds, lines up exactly with how much you can spam the Q. So he can, in fact, spam Q slows on you and keep you in his clutches with Ragnarok. Good luck with that one. The resistances, by the way, no longer lost for the duration of the ability. So, though the resists are lower and catch up late game, you don't lose them when pressing R. So, what does this mean for the numbers? Well, we can scroll all the way up and look at them really, really quickly, which is here. Again, total AD, while R is on, down early, up late. Durability, down early, but up late, and they persist during R, so cool stuff there. Next thing is a Talia Mid rework. So base health down, health regen down as well. Base mana up, but mana regen is down, which pushes her toward mid away from support. And base armor down, which makes her very, very fragile. And a bit less move speed, plus a really big nerf to her early rock surfing. Functionally, she is worse at roaming until level 15. That's a pretty big nerf. She's also squishier for the entire game. That's a pretty big deal. Threaded Volley is now cheaper late game and has a lower cooldown at all points in time. The damage is overall lower. This is the math. The damage is lower. But the stone shards now blow up. That matters a lot. Also, there's a new mechanic where worked ground is different. Instead of throwing one rock and making it cost 1 mana, you throw a boulder and consume worked ground. This boulder deals double damage, which makes a worked ground Taliyah Q absurdly stronger than before, and is a really, 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 really big change. AoE Q is back, and work ground doesn't suck. This is awesome. Taliyah looks way better now, and I'm excited for this one. Seismic Shove now becomes functionally free. The cooldown is lower. The knockup radius is larger, but the damage is gone. It is a more reliable, higher uptime, lower cost utility ability. It is not a nuke. Her damage is all in Q and E. Unraveled Earth, Cooldown functionally nerfed. You max this 1 second. I think you still will. I mean, since W has no damage, then there's no way you max W second. Damage initial cast is up for the bad cases. Higher base damage, higher AP ratio. Slow is roughly the same to slightly nerfed. Not a big deal here. Boulder Detonation is down, except that the maximum damage, so like your upfront damage is higher, and theoretical boulder damage, at least in late game, right, from about rank 3 onwards because of the AP ratio buff, is going to do more damage for a single boulder detonation, except that hitting all the boulders is going to deal less damage. So the ideal WE combo is down quite a bit because W got nerfed, does no damage, and ideal E damage is nerfed, but the I threw out E and you dashed over one rock, that got buffed. The shape is now long instead of wide, and it now stuns people who dash over it. So even though she has lost damage, she says hey, LeBlanc, I dare you to dash at me because you ain't gonna do that. You can walk around it. It's narrower. They can walk around it and go in, but you can kind of cover quite a bit of distance. Also doesn't auto-detonate, so as a wave clear tool, as a jungle clear tool, it is going to be worse, but keep in mind, your Q is wave clear, so it's going to be fine. Weaver's Wall, nerfed early, better late. The dash is better. Taking damage while knocks Taliyah off her wall, big deal there. She can use it to escape if she hasn't taken damage recently to prevent her from casting it. Pretty big deal. Huge change, looks really fun, looks really exciting. Ahri, 2-second cooldown here, 10-second cooldown here, not a big change. Braum, more stuns late game. Pretty substantial durability increase on Unbreakable. Seems cool there. Hecarim is getting an AD ratio buff on Q. This is about a 3% damage buff to Hecarim Q for an AD build. This does not make up for the nerf from 12.6, but does walk it back a little bit. And 2 seconds on Spirit of Dread is a jungle clear, 4 seconds on Spirit of Dread is a jungle clear buff because this is not always up from starting your camps up, and it does have decent flat damage, does have some sustain, will help jungle clear for sure. Are you going to get 2 off in a team fight? Still probably not, but still nice. Master using 0, 10, 20% attack speed on Highlander. Pretty small love tap down for the late game. Nidalee loses 30 base health. Pretty small tap down, more highly focused for Nidalee. Pike gets a bit more health back when duo laning. A little bit more gray health. Bone Skewer mana cost is up, but it now refunds substantially when hitting an enemy champion. In the early game, you have to land 4 to make up for 1 miss. In the late game, you have to land 2 to make up for 1 miss. Keep that in mind. Might be a nerf for you. But Death from Below has a shorter cooldown, 20 to 10 seconds. However, Nulgar receives a bunch of free gold. If other people steal his kills or he solo kills or whatnot, those are going away. Renata Glass loses 2 armor. Pretty nominal, 1.5% durability decrease for that one. And her passive does a bit less damage. This isn't huge damage, but it does matter. You can apply it up to twice per target. Once when it gets hit, once it gets triggered. This is a pretty meaningful hit. She definitely deals less damage. Definitely a Renata nerf. Renekton is not really seen in Pro and not very good in solo queue either. 5 health growth and 0.4 AD growth. Pretty meaningful. Ruthless Predator. Worse cooldown until you finally get it to max rank at level 13. Worse early, better late. Damage is up per rank. Worse early because the cooldown. Better late because the damage. And his AD growth and health growth. Dominus getting a bit stronger as well. 1/4 more damage. Pretty meaningful there as well. And it scales pretty aggressively, right? It doubles and triples. So a lot of extra late game power to Renekton for sure. Looks pretty sweet. Rengar loses 20 flat damage on Battle Roar on Monster Clear, so gonna have a slower jungle clear. Okay. Shyvana, Burnout just ticks more frequently, just tends to feel pretty good. Flame Breath, Flame Zone works. So basically, if you're in Dragon form and you put the flames on the ground, someone walks in, you get the debuff on them, so you can auto attack them for % max health damage. Looks pretty sweet there as well. Scion does massive reduce damage to structures in zombie form. That's a really big deal. TLDR, really big deal. More passive souls for Thresh, so a bunch more AP and armor. Dark Passage shield strength now scales twice as hard per soul. Keep in mind, this does not double dip here. It's per soul, not per ability power. So, a lot of late game power. This could matter a little bit for durability. We'll see. There's an AP ratio on Box and I believe Q. And I think Flay, actually, yeah, I think Q, E, and R damage are all based on that. And then Dark Passage is functionally just per soul. I don't know why they don't make it an AP ratio. Whatever. Varus, according to solo queue data, W max second Varus is a 0.5% lower win rate than E max second Varus. So we are very, very close to auto attack Varus being as good. I think with this change, this might make it as good or better. And then with this change, which makes him scale more heavily off the attack speed he builds, we are probably going to see some form of attack speed out like Varus be better than caster Varus. Now, I believe untested, I've not looked at numbers, so I could be wrong here. My instinct is that the optimal Varus build is actually a sort of hybrid auto attacker. So I'm thinking items like Kraken Slayer or Gale Force or Shield Bow. Your second item would be something like a Phantom Dancer has AD on it, but I want to say Stridebreaker. No, it's Storm Razor. Storm Razor has AD and attack speed on it. Infinity Edge, okay, it's just raw AD, but it's an Infinity Edge, it's a good item. But basically, items that give AD and attack speed are good items on Varus. You max W second, you are a good auto attacker. This is a valuable kit. Like a valuable kit hook. Having your Q and E scale with damage are good. I'm a really big fan, by the way, of Riot adding crit chance ratios to spells to like flatten them out. Like, I'm a huge fan of Xayah E having a crit chance ratio on it, because that means that Xayah E is always good. So when you go and buy a Hurricane, it still scales your primary spell's damage. I think that is a good thing for the design of AD carries in League of Legends. That is my feeling. That, like, marksmen are unique in that their auto attacks always matter, and Riot should design their abilities in a way that like has them build good auto attack items. That like, I don't hate the idea of lethality Varus, but it makes him really, really flat as a champion, where all he has really is Q and R, and the rest of his kit doesn't really function, despite having an on-hit damage W, and this, like, build stacks then pop stacks play style. Well, lethality doesn't work with his magic damage pop stuff, and 3 attacks is Hail of Blades, and the R gives you stacks anyway, so, like, why bother auto-attacking, right? Whereas if you say, oh, well, on a crit, you apply 2 stacks of the passive, and Q and E have a crit ratio on them, and, like, you know, on critical strike, lower your Q cooldown by 0.5 seconds, like, those are good things that make Varus feel more healthy as a champion to me. Like, those are the kinds of things that I would like to see. Like, that would make Varus a more complete champion. That's what I would want to see. So anyway, there's that. Either way, some changes. Hullbreaker, finally getting a change that I have liked since we saw the Mythic item rework, which most Mythics have a flat scaling from 1 to 10. They're just the same number, and then from like 10 or so onwards, they then scale up. That's how Shield Bow works. That's how Gale Force works. That's how a lot of these items work, and I think it's a very, very good idea. Now, finally, Hullbreaker has that. It now has a flat value, and then comes up from there. And the numbers are, hand-picked to try to make the item not good first, because you're going to be at 1 item by level 11 every time. And you're going to be at 2 items around 11 to 13, right? And so the idea, by the way, the intent behind these changes is they want Hullbreaker first to be weaker. They want Hullbreaker second to be about as good. They want Hullbreaker third to be buffed. To say, okay, well, I went Sunfire Aegis, I went and grabbed the Death's Dance, and now actually, I really want Hullbreaker. Because if I buy it, it's like 70 armor and MR. Wow, that's really good. Okay, let's do it, right? Like, they want that to be really, really seductive, where you're like, you know what? I'm a split push, throw out a Hullbreaker, and it's just like, here's giga busted stats, right? Like, here, like, I'm pivoting my playstyle, we're in there. Like, it's why Hullbreaker's not a Mythic, is they want you to assess game state and say, oh, you know what? And based on how this is going, this is a Hullbreaker game. Not I'm going to come in and, like, I'm Scion, first time Hullbreaker, baby, let's go. I'm ignoring my damn team. Like, that's not what they want, right? Like, they want you to come in and be like, okay, based on where this game is going, this is a Hullbreaker game, right? Like, that's the intended design of this item, of when you're supposed to build it. And so weaker item 1, equal item 2, better item 3. And so we can look at those numbers real quick, which are going to be, here we go, right? Way weaker first item, relatively the same second item. These numbers could be higher, to be fair. I understand that. But, like, yep, if you're buying a third item, it is a stronger item overall, right? And that's it. That's the patch rundown. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you all very, very much. And that is it for me. And bye-bye.